So the session this afternoon is about fueling the use of Office 365 apps in the classroom and across school. And we're going to look at a couple of functions that Forms can perform. And this is a sequence of webinars that we're offering free in conjunction with Microsoft. We've already looked at areas such as Teams and OneDrive, and everything we've looked at so far is really important because Forms sits very well inside of Teams and has many functions, but also it's available from directly in your OneDrive. Additionally, today we are going to offer you the chance to become a Microsoft Innovator Expert, or an MIE. That means later in this session, we'll give you a code to redeem and you can go to the Microsoft Education Center. The Microsoft Education Center is the place where you can pick up all of the resources that we're referencing this afternoon. So if you're after anything that we're covering, there are guides there which will pop into the chat later, and you can follow through the materials and they will mirror what we're going to cover in this session. If you've not been to the Microsoft Education Center previously, I'll pop the link into the chat now, and you can either log in with your account if you already have one. If you don't have an account, it's really quick and easy. You can sign up with the email address from your organization, and then at the end I'll give you a code to redeem, and it will give you 1,000 points, and that's the equivalent of completing 2 courses roughly, because a beginner's course is about 500 points each. And then that will start you on your journey of your own professional development, and you'll become a certified MIE, a Microsoft Innovative Educator. Some people find that really interesting, or actually find that it helps them within their role, or it's going to help other people in their organization. And then you can go on to study further. You can make up strings of courses into what's called learning pathways. And if you find that it's really beneficial, you can apply to become an MIE expert, and the next round of that will be in July 2022. More about that later, and back to what we come to today. So Microsoft Forms. Today we'll have a look at using Forms for data collection. So that might be inside your organization or externally. If you're in a school, you might use it with parents to gather information rather than sending out pieces of paper. It's got many benefits over using traditional methods. The other is in the classroom. You can use Microsoft Forms to create quizzes, and those can be used with pupils and students of all ages. And I've personally taught through different phases of education. There's no problem at all with pupils picking this up and using it. We'll also touch on some of the more advanced features in Forms Pro, and we'll answer any questions either as we go through and you're popping them in the chat, or we can pick them up at the end. So one of the first questions that you'll be presented with when you start to use Forms is whether you want to use a quiz or whether you want to use a form for collecting data. And it's really key that you understand the differentiation between the two, because otherwise it will lead you down a route which may not fulfill all the things that you want to achieve with Forms. They are pretty interchangeable, but there's certain things which will lend themselves to working with pupils and students, and that will give you other options that's just very, very specific to maybe checking progress in learning, either as you're going through or previous to that. So the other areas that we'll focus on is then how to build the form, and that's quite straightforward, but at the end of it you're going to have a lot of data, and it doesn't have to stay in Forms, so we'll examine just how we get it out, and then we'll also look at how we collaborate more easily with colleagues. You can invite people to co-author, or you can share forms out so that the link can go quite easily to other people. As I said, there are a plethora of resources available. So on the Microsoft Education Center, the resources that you can find in there will be the data collection and assessment in Forms, and that's staff-led training. And there's also Microsoft Forms creating authentic assessments. Both of those are available in the Microsoft Education Center, and both of those are going to be referenced in today's training. So I'm just going to swap over and jump into a web browser. Microsoft Forms is available in Office, so if you're not familiar with going into Office 365, you can open up a web browser. The leading web browsers are usually best, so the new Microsoft Edge browser extremely good. Or you can use something like Google Chrome or Firefox. Internet Explorer that came about with Windows 7 has been discontinued in Windows 10. It's no longer supported. So you're going to need to make sure that you do use a modern browser. They're freely available to download and install. You may need to ask an admin if you've got your computer controlled by your organization and you're restricted on installing software. Once you get to office.com, you've got all of your apps to launch down the side there vertically, but you've also, if you click the waffle there, you've got other options, and Microsoft Forms is available there. It will open up as another tab in the browser, and then once it opens up, you'll be presented with a window something like this. Now, if you've used Forms previously, you'll see all of your other forms there. If you haven't, then the area where I've got all these thumbnails of my previews of forms will be completely blank for you, but it doesn't matter today. We can start at any point whatsoever. Just familiarization with where you are. Anything you've edited recently will be in the Recents tab. Then if you've got a form that you use a lot, maybe it's you work in the admin office of a school or a college and you use that on a weekly basis, you can pin your forms so that the important ones are here, and you can share forms either with other people or have them share them with you, which means anything shared with you will appear here. So you've got three options. If you want to additionally get to just your forms, you can scroll down to the bottom, click all my forms, and then they'll be sat there neatly. And that gets rid of, as we had there before, recent, shared with me, and pinned. So you've just got things that you've put into the recycle bin, or you've got all of your forms. One of the new things that Microsoft added fairly recently was the ability to organize these in a better way, because traditionally that's just been the most recent one to the top left, and then they scroll back down a list in date order that they were accessed. But you can now organize things into collections, which are a bit like folders. And if you click on collections, so this one might be class quiz, and I'm going to press create. In here now, I've got my folder, for want of a better word, although it's a collection. You can rename it, you can duplicate it, you can delete it and get rid of it, or you can drag these over and pop them inside, and it will start to group them together, whereas previously you haven't been able to do that. So that's a fairly new feature and something that's been added in from feedback from people that have been using Forms as a product. I'm just going to delete that one and get rid of it, as I don't need it at the moment, but it's all quick and easy to manage. You've also got the option to change the way that your forms are organized, so you can have them as a list, but you lose that preview thumbnail element. So I tend to keep mine as tiles, and then I can see what they're about, and I get a bit more of an idea of what I'm clicking on. You can end up with hundreds and hundreds, so after a while you'll start to use the filter up here just to type in the name of the one you want, and it will sift its way to the top. It depends on if you're someone who likes to organize by piling things in, or if you're a filer that just needs to find some things in that way. When you want to start a new quiz, they're up there, but you may not want to have a quiz itself to use with pupils. You may want a form. So let's start by going into forms. So this would be something for data collection with usually outside of school and outside of lessons, although you could use this in lessons. So I've taught, for instance, a science inquiry, and we've collected data in the science inquiry, and then we've used that form there option is to bring the information in, and then we've used that as the discussion point with the learning with the pupils that we're teaching at the time. The philosophy with forms is very much point and click. So this might be, let's say, class, let's put science survey. And we are going to be surveying heights. And in here, we can give a little description for the pupils that are filling it in. So we can say, please let us know your height. Don't have to have a description. It's there if you want to. If you want to make things stand out a little bit more, whenever you see that logo there of a pen against an image, you click on that. You don't have to upload images, but if you want to, you can upload them if you've got them saved locally on your computer or your device. You can also branch over to OneDrive, and then it will look in your OneDrive. Your OneDrive, for those of you that haven't used it, is provided through Office 365, and it's like having a USB stick in the cloud. It's private to you. You can put all of your files and folders there, but you can share with people from it. But more than likely, you're going to use the image search, and it's live inside a form. So if you are using this with colleagues, or if you're using this with pupils and students, it means everything is on the one page and you haven't got them roaming around. So we are going to look for, let's say, measuring heights. Measure heights. So if we go into measure heights, let's see if we can find something that's appropriate. Oh, let's put that in. That'll do. We'll click add. So it just makes it a bit more engaging, and people look at it and oh, that one doesn't support it, so we'll try again. Let's see if we can find one. Measure heights of humans. Will that one go in? Some file formats don't get supported, most do, but occasionally you'll get one. It's rather than waste a lot of time this afternoon, I will let that one just sit there. You've got some examples in a bit. You will see where we've got pictures in and we've added them through. So now you've got your title, you start adding your questions. You press the plus and it will unfold a menu. You get the 4 most frequently used question types, which are there, but there's a drop down arrow on the right hand side and you can select different types of questions. So you may want to have a multiple choice for some questions, but here we're going to want to know the height of our pupils. So I think we'll have a text question, and it might be simply is, what is your height? And then you can have the question, so it's a short answer and there'll be a box to put in a small amount of text, or you can have it a long answer, and then that would be, for instance, if you were replying with a whole paragraph. You can also say whether a question is required or whether somebody can skip past it. Now, I don't want anybody to be able to submit their quiz without making it a required question, so that's in there. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can add in some other options, such as you can have a subtitle to the question. So just like when we had the header, there was a subtitle there. Main title was Science Survey and Height. Subtitle was Please Let Us Know Your Height. You can have exactly the same down here in the question, and that is toggled on and off here. You can additionally add in some restrictions, and then you can say, well, there are restrictions to what's going to be answered here. So you can have a number that's greater than or equal to or less than or between. And based on what you put in the question, it will then suggest restrictions that you could apply. So you might say you have a number between, and you know that pupils in your class are going to be more than 10 centimeters in height. So we'll have 10 centimeters. Apologies, my screen seems to be refreshing quite a bit. And it might go up to 200. So you enter the number between, and that will prompt them when they come to do that. There is a option down here to include branching, and I'll show you that in a real example in a bit where it's more meaningful. So very quickly, you can build your survey, and if you wanted to add in another one, and the next one was going to be multiple choice, and here it could be, are you the tallest in the class? And you could carry on asking questions. If you want to, you can click on a question and you can move it. So to move it up and down, if you wanted to make that the first question, you press the arrows to slide it. So that question is now first, and our what is your height question is second. I could remove that and move that back to the second. Can delete it if I wish, so I can take that question out if I think it's a nonsense. If I've spent a little bit of time creating a question and I want to subtly amend it, I can copy that question and reuse it. And then down here, because it's a multiple choice, you get different ways of choosing how the person can interact. So you can allow multiple answers, or people can pick one. So you might want the multiple choice where there's a single answer that you desire, or you may say, well, I want to give people 2 or 3 choices to pick from and allow them to have more than one thing ticked. So if you want multiple answers, you would toggle that on. And the questions have similar options depending on the question type. Once you've got your quiz or your survey sorted, you go to preview, and that will allow you to see just what it looks like for the person that's going to be receiving the link. Now, at the moment, it's pretty bland, but it functions broadly as I want it to be. As you can see at the top, this is how it would look on a computer, but at the same time, the options are available to you to scale it and use it in other platforms. So if you want to, you can send this link and somebody could open it on a mobile phone or a tablet device. And the beauty of using Microsoft Forms is that it will scale automatically to suit the device that it's on. So you don't have to worry about how to reorganize it. That's handled by Microsoft. One of the other benefits, and we've covered this in previous sessions, it's got immersive reader built in. For those people that haven't used that before, that's a access tool for you to be able to access text. Maybe your native language is in English. Maybe you've got a reading level which is below that to access the text which is in this form. So you can use Immersive Reader, and Immersive Reader will strip away the busyness of the form and allows it to be read to you. You can display it in other languages. You can use pictorial dictionaries and so forth. And we've already had sessions on that, but just to let you know that Immersive Reader is embedded into Microsoft Forms to improve access to learning or access to resources, however you're doing this. Now, I've had a quick look at it and I want to make it look a little bit more appealing. So one of the things that quizzes and forms have are themes. So this is meant for heights and in looking at that with children. So I think I'll apply something that's a bit fun. So I had a look at that. Yep, that looks a bit sciencey in the background. I could, if I wanted to, add in my own. So in here, you can upload your own image and you can add your own color scheme. So if you wanted to brand it to your school or your organization, that's how you achieve it from there. Or if you've got something you want to use for a specific purpose, and actually what's here as a default from Microsoft just doesn't cut it, then the plus button in the bottom there will cover that. If I go across to the side, you've got various settings available to you. It's worth making sure that these are exactly how you want them to be before you press the share button, and we'll go on to the share button next. So you can say that only people inside of your organization can respond, which is great if you want to collect, for instance, responses from staff or pupils and students. But if you want this to go to parents or maybe governors or trustees, you're going to need to toggle onto anyone can respond. If you do leave it on any people in your organization, you can have their name recorded. So it will take the name off of the email address they've been provided with. And you can limit the number of responses. So if you leave this unticked, they can enter more and more responses over and over again. If you want only one per person, then you can tick that and it will limit the amount of times that they can complete the form and submit the responses into you. You can be really specific. If you click that one, you can say that there's specific people in my organization that I want to access this, and then you can specify who they are. Options for responses, you can have just accept responses, and you can have the form where you're viewing it for a period of time where you want it to be, or you can control when it is open and available. So you could set a start date. So I might say it's going to go live at 5 o'clock tonight. And then the end date, it will close off if we scroll down, let's say this time next week, and we'll have it close at a similar time. So my form will be available for a week. You can also say, and this is useful in class if you're using it to survey with pupils, you can have the question shuffled. So if someone's sat side by side on the computer, they can't see what the other person's putting in. And the question they have first might be last for the other one or in the middle of the deck. So if you want to have shuffle of questions, you can have it all questions, or you can select locked questions. You can also, if you want to, and you get to a certain amount of questions, have a progress bar, and the progress bar will show you exactly how far through the form you are when you're completing it. You can add a customized thank you message. So your response was submitted as the default, but you could have thank you for letting me know your height or confirming your height. And then you could have a contact address for the school if you want, saying if there are any questions about this form, if you've got any concerns, please email the office on this address or call us on this number. It's really up to you what you'd like in that message there if you wish to use it. And then down the bottom, you can have response receipts. So you can have a response to say, reassure the person that they've made a submission, and you can get an email notification of each response. So to save you having to come back in to look if you've had responses, I tend to leave that toggled on because then I get an email, someone's made a new response in my form, I can go over and have a look at it, and it saves me an extra job of going in and checking. So I'm going to allow people to get a receipt of their submission, and I think they're all the settings that I want to have. So I'm just going to click on that. If you want to, maybe you've got EAL pupils, or you've got parents with different ethnic backgrounds and they've got a range of languages, you can add in languages into the form, so they can toggle so the form displays in their own languages for the entire form rather than reading through the guided access tool. So if I wanted, let's say I know that I've got people that speak, let's say that we come from Bosnia, and I've also got, let's say, you can search on here. I know that I've got a strong Polish community with me, and I need to make sure that they can access this form. What it will do then is put a box in for them that allows them to toggle between the languages. So if I'm going to go back to preview, it looks very different from when we looked at it previously. It's branded up. I've got a color scheme. Here is where I could change my languages. So if I wanted it in Polish, I can click on the Polish button, and then it will change the entire form into Polish. If I just do that, it will go across. At the same time, if I go back to English, I can display it on the mobile again and say, look, that's just, yep, that looks good to me. Or I might need to go back and change option 2. It's really for you to get the look and the feel of the form correct. And once you've got everything as you'd like it to be, that's when you can use the share button. So the share button is how you get your form to other people. It's really careful option up here that you need to change. So the drop down box says specific people in my organization can respond, or anyone can respond, or only people in my organization. So specific people means you are going to determine who they are. You're going to use their email addresses and say, for instance, only the head of the school and the senior leadership team. Or you might say it's only the classroom teachers and I don't want anybody else to respond. It's up to you to specify who it is if you want that to be that way. Or you can just say, look, anyone in my organization that's got an email address that ends with the same domain name that I've got, will be able to fill the form in. And if somebody else gets it, it doesn't have an email address for my organization or my school, then it won't work for them. Or you can open it right up. Maybe it's going out to parents or governors, or the PTA are going to get it. Well, then it can be anyone can respond. And that will mean regardless of whether they've got an Office 365 account or not, they might be using a Google email address, they might be using another company's altogether. They can just jump onto the link and they can complete the form and get it back to you. So it's really handy in that way to get people easily into an electronic platform, and it funnels that data back into you. And we'll have a look at how responses are filled out in a little bit. To get that URL, that address out, you can just copy it and then you can paste it somewhere else. Or you can shorten that URL if you want, and that will bring it down in size, so it's a more compact URL. Depends on whether you want to show that URL or hide it in a hyperlink. So that allows you to get a copy. You could paste that into an email and say, please click here to access the form for the parent survey about where we are going to go for our Year 6 trip. Or you could just have the whole ugly URL pasted in the email. Depends on how you want to structure things. So the option there is to get a link. You can also have a QR code, and that QR code can be downloaded so it can come onto an A4 sheet of paper. So if I want pupils to be independent in learning, or sometimes I want to limit the number of people coming into school, I might put a QR code in the classroom, and then the pupil can scan the QR code. It will instantly bring the form up on their device that they're using. They can complete it for me, so they haven't got to worry about going to an address. But I might equally pop that into their classroom team in Teams, which is where Teams and Forms are best buddies, because you can have links for forms and forms inside of Microsoft Teams. Additionally, I've seen this used to put in the windows of buildings. So maybe your parents are coming in, you're trying to limit the number of parents coming into reception. You could say, look, if you want to access the trip form to put your child's application in to go on the trip, scan this QR code with the camera on your phone or your tablet device, and it will instantly open up their web browser and they go straight to the QR code. So QR codes are really handy ways of getting people into forms without having to type this whole long link here. But if you're sending them a link to click in an email, then probably you're going to use the link there. One of the other things you can do You can embed it into things like websites. So anything that works on HTML, you can get the embed link code. You can specify how many pixels wide and high you want it to display in, copy that, and then as long as you've got a website that will support it, you can embed that code in, and the form will sit inside of your website. So you don't even have to have a link to click. It's just displayed when you get to the web page itself. The final option, if you know that you've got somebody that you want to contact and you want to email them, what you can do is you can just click the email button. It will open up Outlook email, and then it will pre-fill with this form, and then you can send it to an individual. That's fairly limited in its scope. Most people either use a link, a QR code, or they embed it into a website. Let me drop down the options here. So the other thing you can do is you can share with a colleague. So if you've developed this as a template, you know it's going to benefit somebody else in your school or your organization, you can duplicate a link for the template. So it's really important that you don't send this one incorrectly if you want parents to fill something in. Otherwise, you're going to give them editing rights to the template. Or you can also collaborate with a colleague. So if you want to joint author and create this form, they've got to have an Office 365 account in your school or your college or organization. But what you can do is you can send them that link, and then that link there will enable them to come into the single form that you're editing in your Office 365 account, and then craft that and build it in a way. So you've got shared collaboration and building, get a template copy, or up here, get a response link to fill it in. And it's up to you really to decide which one you want to share. Most of the time it's going to be using the top option, which is a response link. I'm just going to pop back over while that's there and see if anyone's popped any questions into the chat at all. Nothing in there at the moment. Please do feel free to pop any questions in if you have anything that's come to mind, or you want to quiz me on any aspects of using the forms, but I'll carry on at the moment and I'll jump back over. So that in itself is the share link, and it's no more complicated than that. The preview button, theme to change the way it looks, share to get other people into your form, and then the dots on the side will get you into various aspects. You can print a form out, it will come out as a PDF, but it loses many of the interactive features that you're going to use for the fact that you're using an online form, and you may as well have just used a paper form if that's the case. If you want to close the form down, you can press the cross on the tab in the web browser and that will get rid of it, or you can press the forms button and that will get you back to forms itself, which is the page we're on here. So if I just refresh that, there is my science survey heights quiz we just created, and we've got other either quizzes or collection forms there. So if I take you in just to look at a class quiz that's more developed, this one is a cells test. So this would be for year 7 science, when in secondary school they come across the cells topic for the first time. So you could ask them certain questions about features in a plant cell and animal cell. You could ask them then to order things, and then you could give them a picture to look at something like photosynthesis in a cell. That for pupils is very, very straightforward, and one of the things that you can do as a class teacher is you can share that in Teams, or you could email it to them separately, but you can determine in a quiz what the correct answer is. So I've indicated there by using the dots on the side that that's the correct answer. I could change it and tick this one to say that it's the correct answer. You will invest some time in building your form or your quiz. There isn't a shop that you can go to pick them up from, but do share them with colleagues. But once you've invested that time and it's been made, what you can do is you can recycle it year after year, but also you can reduce the workload as a teacher, because what you don't have to do is mark your Microsoft form, because you can determine what the correct answer is. And then you can give a example here is you can give a prompt. So might be great, please undertake the extension task, or it could be, unfortunately, this is incorrect. Go to this website and revise plant cells, then come back and retake the test again. So again, in the classroom, or whether they're working on this as a test at home, you can direct them to something that which they can be independent in accessing, but it's not workload on you because you've put the effort in creating the form in the first place. We've said that's a required answer, and the same would go through here. So if I want to go and edit it, so it might be here we've got photosynthesis, and then we could say what's the chemical equation and so forth. So that is something that would very nicely build into a collection of quizzes that you can either use to formatively check progress in learning, where you're delivering a topic or you're delivering a sequence of learning. You might want to check that it's secure with the pupils, and you can plan interventions for teaching if not. But equally, you might use it summatively, and at the end of a topic, you might want to use it as your end of topic test. You might want to use it as a way of checking is learning secure before I move on. Or you might want to, in the instance of this one, this turn it on quiz, you might want to say, look, I know that last year you did some STEM work, so science, technology, engineering, and maths. I want to know broadly how secure you are things like computer coding or things like the water cycle in science. So you could give them that as a class quiz before they start with you, so that you've got a baseline to understand how secure they are with knowledge from prior years learning, whether you need to address that when you're teaching. So quizzes can be used in many ways, and they can be embedded into Microsoft Teams as well. See over here, Helen, you've asked a question. Can you use forms to allow parents to book a parents' evening slots? You can, but it's not the best platform for that. There is an app in Office 365 called Bookings, and that's a better way to use for things like booking parents' evenings, or you could do it through Calendar in Outlook as well at the same time. It doesn't tend to be that you can specify that a slot has gone, and forms can't determine that, for instance, if a parent wanted 7 to 7:10 for that slot to speak to their English teacher, it's not smart enough to know that that's then taken and the other parent can still grab that slot. So using Bookings, which is the app in Office 365, will help you with that. Or setting up calendars with booking slots in Outlook is also something that could help you with that. Forms wouldn't be the best platform to choose for parents' evening bookings. It's going to jump back over into the form itself. So I'm going to come back into forms. If you want to have a look at collecting information, there's lots of different types of questions, and I haven't gone through them all in creating them, but what I have got is a demo version of a form here to look at how those questions are. Now, when you have a multiple choice questions you've seen, you can type the questions into the box, you can delete them by adding by pressing the bin there, you can add other options in, or you can choose an other option if you want to have something more generic. And all of the different questions, such as here's an example of ranking something. So you can give a title of all the different things you want people to rank in order. Now, this is how it appears to me, editing, but what it would appear like if I go to preview mode for someone receiving it is like this. So just to give you an idea of multiple choice and what it would look like and all the other questions, I will run through those types for you, but also this is an example of how branching would work. So here, the people that are filling in this, they've got a progress bar at the bottom, and all they get displayed at the beginning is question 1. And they need to answer for their learning preferences. Are they a morning learner or an afternoon learner? And then depending on how they answer, they will jump to question 2 or question 3. What that looks like on my side, here's question 1, the question we were just looking at when we were previewing it as if we were going to fill it in. I can control what happens with the branching by clicking the 3 dots there and go to add branching. So depending on what the person answers, if they answer morning, I want them to go to question 2 in my sequence. So it will automatically jump, it will branch and take 2 paths. If they say they're an afternoon person, well, there's little point me asking them about morning and why they're a morning learner. So they will never see the question 2, and question 2 for them will actually be the 3rd question in my sequence of my questions that I've got and I've created, and they'll skip past. If they are a morning person, they'll go straight to question 2, and they would never see question 3. So branching is good. It's one of those more professional advanced options for determining the flow or the journey that someone has through a form, and that they only see the bits that are relevant to them, not all of the options you may have put into the background. So if I go through in here, I might say that I'm an afternoon person, and then automatically it's said that this is question 2 that I'm seeing, but in reality, because I created this, I know that's question 3. But for them, it automatically renumbers it, and they're never going to be any the wiser. So then here is an example of a text question. There's immersive reader kicking in, so it could read that question or a whole form. You can have a ratings question where you can give something a stars rating, and you can change the rating scale, so it could be out of 10, out of 5, and so forth. You can have a date example where you say something's on a date. So if you were surveying when they might feel they want their child to go on a trip, or when they'd like to come to a parents' evening and so forth, you could use the date option there. You can rank things in order. So it might be your preferred subject. So I might say, look, I'd like science to be at the top. Then I'm a bit of a maths person and English is last. And you can move things backwards and forwards. So you can have multiple options there. You can give things a rating. So here, if I was surveying science teaching in a secondary school, I might say to the pupils or the students, look, what do you think about biology, chemistry and physics, and how secure do you think you are with your learning in those subjects? So it might be that I feel that I'm only emerging in biology, but I'm mastering physics, and I'm probably just about expected level in chemistry, and I can move those backwards and forwards as I want to while I'm completing the form. You can also have what's called a net promoter score, and that's how, so in this instance, it's how likely you're going to do something. So I've said it's not likely at this end, and you can change the labels that are on the net promoter score through to extremely likely, and I can say how likely I am to try something new today, how much I feel I can take risks. You could also get people to upload files and return them to you through a form, and those will save into a folder in your OneDrive so you can get to them, but other people in your organization can't. So that you can set a limit on that, and you can also set the type of files that you'll accept. So I've set 100 megabyte size of file to be pretty generous, and the type there. And then section 2, future developments of the school, and I need to add in a question there about please give me some insight to what you'd like to see in future developments or offerings that the school would give you. And then I submit it in. And once it's been submitted, I'm just going to come back out of that. From my perspective, I will see a responses tab, and then I can view those responses over here in either a form or a quiz. It will display in the same way. It will tell me I've had 6 responses. It took people on average 2.5 minutes roughly to fill this in. My form is still active, so it's not closed off. Down here, you've got options to delete certain responses, or you can print out a summary. You can also create a summary link if you want to share that summary with somebody else. And then you can view the mean of the results and the responses you've had in, and it will display them in the best way graphically or with lists of responses. So here you go, text answers that have come in, don't often get out of bed before 10 a.m. because I sleep in and so forth. And it gives you a way just to look down what you've got back in the way of data. But that may not be enough, or it may not be it may not give you enough depth to analyze what you've received. So you can take the data that you've got in your form and you can open it in Excel. And what it will then allow you to do is analyze it further or pull it apart and then use all of the features that you might have in an Excel spreadsheet to delve deeper into that data. It doesn't destroy or doesn't take away from the responses you've got in the form, but what it does do is it will allow, anytime you get another response that comes into the form, it will update the Excel spreadsheet so that they push across and push through so that you can get that information there. So you've got the ability to get information out of Microsoft Forms. It isn't stuck in the form, but very often what you get in the way of responses is enough for you to go online and have a look, but it's there for the power users if they want to get something more out of it. What it looks like on a class quiz, so if I just duck across, I think I've had a class quiz of the response. No, I haven't. See responses from the top level out here. You can see I've got 6 responses on that and 0 responses in there and 0 responses there. Thought I had a class quiz with a response, but I haven't. But it would display in a very similar way. So you could view the responses for your entire class. You may have only sent the link for the form to a small set of pupils that you're going to work with on an intervention or to extend their learning. But the information that you've got here in Forms is always live in the cloud. So if you've left school, the other benefit is that this is available from anywhere. So you can log into any computer, go to www.office.com, sign in with your Office 365 account, which will be your school email address and your password, and then you're straight in here and you can just do everything you'd like to in the web browser as different tabs. The tabs will stack up, so at some point you'll probably want to close a few down, but it's not like you're going to lose anything. If you think, oh no, something's not displaying, I haven't got what I was working on before, just press the refresh button and it will then bring it all back, and it will then show you exactly what you've got in the way of the forms that you've created, and you can go back in at any point and you can edit them from there. If you've got a form that you want to get rid of, let me just go back across. On the dots on the side there, you can copy it, you could move it, you can also add it to your pinned list, you can remove it from the list. If you are in your own forms and you want to get rid of a form entirely, you can delete it and then it will end up over here in the recycle bin. So you can see there's several forms that I've worked on previously and they're just sat there and they're just waiting to have the bin emptied. They will sit there for the default policy for your Office 365, and that can be changed for each organization. I believe the default is currently 180 days before they auto delete. So if you need to go and fetch something back, you can drag it back out the recycle bin and pop it back into your all forms. I'm just going to pop back over and see if there are any questions. There's nothing else in the chat. Does anybody want to unmute and ask anything at all? No problem at all, Anita. If you need to go, we're recording this, so you can always come back, and I'll put the links for the YouTube channel in the chat. The chat will be available to you afterwards, so you can always go and pick up our YouTube channel from that. Thank you for coming along today. It's been great to have you here. The presentation itself, let's just quickly jump back over then and swap back screens. So the bit that I'm going to take you back to next is the Microsoft Education Center, because it will make more sense now we've gone through the presentation. So just redisplay the presentation on the screen, and there we go. So the two courses that I'm recommending to you in the Microsoft Education Center, data collection and assessment in forms, will cover both. That will cover using a form or a quiz, and that's designed for staff to undertake that and understand a bit more. So if you come along to today's session, we've covered everything in there, and you've been here, so that's great, but other people may want to have the same experience. So they're welcome to watch the video, but they can also undertake some self-study in there, and they'll get the resources through there. If you've got people that are involved with delivering learning, be it students or pupils, or you're working in college, HEFE, then the Creating Authentic Assessments is another good course to undertake in the Microsoft Education Center. So all of those are available to you, and they're on there free of charge. Now, if you have signed in while we were speaking earlier, you've qualified from coming along today for completing those two courses, which were worth 500 points each. So you can redeem the code at the bottom of the screen there. That code, if you are wondering where you put it, on the bottom left-hand corner, I've got a screenshot of being signed into the Microsoft Education Center. So you can see that you've got the initials of the person who signed in there, LA, rather than the sign in button. If you click your initials, and then a little menu will come out which says redeem achievement code, and then in the middle of the screen will pop up a window where you can enter a code beginning with T, and then in the top right hand corner of the slide I'm currently sharing with you, you can redeem that code. So what it allows you to do then is get accredited today for what's called some bespoke learning, and that will cover the content that's here in the two courses for Microsoft Forms, and then that will count towards your learning history. If anyone's busy typing that in, I will also copy and paste that and put it into the chat so you can copy and paste it out. If you've got other colleagues that will be watching this afterwards, then you can always share that code with them as well. There's the code in chat. So you can go through, and at any point you can use this for CPD with your school. While you're busy doing that, I would really value getting your input on this session and maybe future sessions. So I've got a very quick Microsoft form, and this will give you an example of how we use Microsoft Forms as a company. It's only got 6 questions on it. If you could pop in some tick box answers, that would help me shape future training. I also said that I would give you the links to our YouTube channel where all of our prior sessions are, and our YouTube channel is on the following link, which I'll also put into the chat for you. There you can find previous sessions and other courses that we've run. So if you click on that link, you'll be able to get to the Turn It On YouTube channel, and all of our courses are there. We've got future courses coming up in conjunction with Microsoft, and you can book those on Eventbrite. The next one that I'm running in this series will be on Minecraft Education Edition and how to use that in the curriculum. And that is bookable through the Eventbrite link there. So you're welcome to come back on there. But there's also other courses we're running that aren't in this series. Where do the individual responses get stored? The individual responses get stored in the cloud in your personal area of Office 365. So your forms are private to you. So on that responses tab, and I'll quickly jump back over and show you that again. On the responses tab, those responses stay private in your area. So if I jump back into one of those forms, let's say that I'm going to go into my demo form. So these responses here, these 6 people, they're stored privately in Microsoft Office 365 in my OneDrive. Nobody else can see them. Nobody else can get to them from a GDPR perspective. So in that way, you'll be data protection compliant. If you wish to share them with someone and you want to export the spreadsheet, you might need to apply anonymization or pseudonymization, where instead of it saying the pupils' names, you say pupil A, B, C, D, E, and so forth, before sharing that with other colleagues or the governing body or whoever it is you're going to give it to. But as far as the initial data that's collected in those responses, they're stored in your Office 365 account. So no one else is going to be able to get to that. That's entirely private to you. Does that answer that question, or is there something else you wanted to know about that? Any other questions from anyone while Helen's just answering that one? No problem, Helen. See somebody else typing. I'll just let that question appear there. I'm going to stop the recording at this point as well. So if you do want to speak to me, you're more than welcome to